Yeah, the next few slides. This is an image from Haiti. It's really a beautiful country. This is during rainy season, and yeah, but you can see that the only place the trees are growing there are basically around people's homes. Most of the mountains are just bare. So I'm really, it's my wish and hope that someday this becomes the predominant way of farming there, and in the process of growing food, they'll also like restore their ecosystem. There's massive amount of soil erosion. They've lost all the coral off the island because every time it rains with their heavy tropical storms, the rivers are just loaded with soil, and they're losing their fertility. So practices like this will help, and there are some of the benefits we're going to cover listed below, but I'll just go through those one at a time. So one of the benefits of syntropic farming and farming with trees is that you get better water infiltration, which now is becoming a common way to measure soil regeneration. We'll come out and do tests where they look and see how fast water gets absorbed into your soil, because now we're realizing that's a sign of healthy soil. And yeah, and if you, especially like areas like this where you experience long drought seasons, you want to absorb as much of the rain as you can. And so what's fascinating with syntropics, it does it without earthworks. It does it just by transforming the chemistry of the soil, and also on a macro level by all the root channels that you're producing with your trees. And when you absorb more of the water, you're also securing your drinking water. Springs in the water table get refilled. Here's just a quick image. When there's no trees, you get the flooding and the erosion. When there's trees, you can see that helps the rain enter the soil. And I have some other better videos of this as well. And this is happening not only because of the remember the soil aggregates I showed before on that wheat plant? Soil aggregates are like sponges. There is air in that aggregate, and so on the macro level we have the roots creating channels, but on the micro level you have these aggregates which are porous, and so when it rains it helps the water just come in. It can take clay packed soil and really make it within a short amount of time make it absorbent. And on top of that, it also prevents waterlogging, because even though you're pulling a lot of water into the soil, the aggregates still have some space for oxygen, so you're not drowning. So this is a regenerative project that was somewhere in Africa. I'm not sure which country, and it's not syntropic, but they use some of the principles. And what I think is important to see here is how it resists drought. And what we're seeing on this is not before and after. This is actually the same year, but these are images taken from different parts of the same farmer's property. And he has been farming, I believe this is jack bean and corn. So it's a really simple association or consortium. And the only difference is he'd been doing that practice for 7 years here, whereas in this area on the left was the first time he planted the beans with the corn. He realized it was helping, and so he's starting to expand it to his whole property. And you can see in the area where he's been regenerating soil, he's going to get harvest. Looks like actually a pretty good harvest despite drought. Whereas on the left, it looks like it's going to be a total crop loss. This is an image from Brazil helping to highlight how, in some cases, syntropic farming can resist fire. This property, it looks like a lens or a half circle, is one of the experts or consultants that comes to Brazil. His name's Paraguay. This is his property that he'd been working on for years. And they had grasslands all around his property that in dry season caught on fire, and you can see it didn't damage his agroforestry system. And I think there's two reasons why. One is there are these dense plantings of trees which are holding the water in the soil, but that alone is not adequate. The other thing with syntropic is the cutting, because we talked about the consortium. The cutting, you should really cut most of your biomass plants at the end of rainy season. That stimulates fresh green growth into the dry season as opposed to having brown grass and trees. And that's what he was practicing there. So he had like a wall of green in dry season. Combination of the planting and the management.
Did you have eucalyptus in there?
I've actually been in there and worked, and I don't recall eucalyptus. The main biomass tree I recall was Inga. No, not Inga, Gliadicea sepium. And yeah.
A follow-up question on this one. So you say at the end of the dry season you slash off everything which is like in excess in order to allow it to shoot. How long is the dry season and so they are like on residual moisture then that they start to grow?
Yeah.
It's not raining anymore. So how long is the rainy season then?
I don't remember there because I haven't been going, but in Haiti it's 6 months. And we do the same thing. Yeah. It's the exact opposite of what you guys have here. It's like their dry season is November through April. This is a picture from Honduras, which shows again the ability to resist drought and to farm not so dependent on the rain. This is this is from an organization called Inga Foundation, and it's also uses a lot of the principles of Syntropic Agriculture, but they use only Inga trees in their alleys. But what was cool about this image, so they plant trees about 4 meters apart, and they manage them like I'm mentioning. They prune them heavy. They use all the material to mulch the soil, and this farmer planted beans, and there was not a single rainfall from the time he planted till the time he harvested those beans. He had no irrigation, and for people who disbelieve this can be true, go in the middle of dry season somewhere in Zambia here into a dense forest, remove the leaf litter and touch the ground. You'll find there's moisture in the soil. In Haiti, we've done that where we take the farmers in the middle of dry season and they just can't believe that your system can hold water, but it does. Nature does it all the time. So this, I feel like, depending, obviously some crops are really dependent on water. Beans are not. Beans are more forgiving, so this doesn't mean you can grow anything without irrigation, or, you know what I mean? But it does, I think it can extend activities into dry season farther than what they're doing. And some crops you potentially could grow just like those beans, like without excess. Another benefit is an increase in yields. Assuming your property is degraded, and you're having a reduction. This farmer in Guatemala was getting to the point where he's only getting 1 corn per stalk. And I think he's using mucuna or velvet bean as an intercrop. So it's not a full syntropic system, but he was in there using some regenerative processes. And within a few years, he was getting 3 ears of corn. So in the right setting, it can really make a visual improvement in crop yields. Is a question?
How do they harvest the corn with the crops or whatever? I mean, can you still do it with the machine or?
No, I think this is. I don't know the answer to that question, but I believe this guy's it's all by hand. So this isn't like a mechanized farming operation. This is like probably he's got just like a couple hectares, doing it all by hand. And they have to. Mucuna is not the favored. I would not recommend that one, to be honest with you. It's really aggressive. You have to come and cut it a couple times before you harvest, or it can kill your corn. Jack bean would be a better option nowadays. But okay, and another benefit is prevention of soil erosion. And I already talked earlier about the aggregates and how they are like glue. So here's a visual to prove it in case you didn't believe. On the right is a soil aggregate. On the left is just a piece of earth that was from bare soil. So somewhere where they had been running tractors and tilling, so there wasn't the ability for aggregates to form. And this is from the NRCS, a U.S. Company and organization. And so you can see what happens when you put them in water. And I've done this test. It's really cool. It's not so hard to do.
you can do to check the soils.
Yeah.
It's a good check.
Yeah, it's a good, yeah, you can, sometimes I'll tap them a little and get started and you'll see, so the soil, with the aggregate, water stays clean, the soil stays there. On the left, you're just losing everything, it's dissolving. This is what happens when it rains every time. Okay, and then there's a video I'm going to show in a second for this. So on the right, you have a plastic bin with tons of plants growing. On the left, just bare soil. They put drains, one right at the soil level, one at the bottom, okay? And then they're going to water both tubs. And what you hopefully see is that this tub full of plants, it absorbs the water. Barely anything comes out of that top drain. And eventually it comes out instead clear at the bottom. Whereas the one on the left, almost all your water is just, it's leaving the land, taking its fertility with you. So even farms in the US that are not doing, if you look closely, it's hard to see, but if you look closely, you can see like black water coming from here, emptying there. Versus this side, there will be delay. Eventually when the water starts coming, it's coming in clear. And so even in the US where people aren't doing like full regenerative, farmers know they're losing money when they have bare soil. They're cover cropping, they're intercropping, they're doing whatever they can to not leave their farm exposed like that. So, okay, and maybe one of the most fantastic benefits is disease resistance. And I'm going to give you two examples and I'm going to describe how I think it works. So one, there's two pretty compelling examples from Brazil. One is with citrus greening disease, which is a disease that's been so far incurable, and it's really decimating orchards, citrus crops around the world. There was a citrus farmer, he was growing Valencia oranges in Brazil, and he wanted to try Syntropic, so he actually had trees already affected with the disease. They were not productive, and they transitioned to Syntropic, so they came back and added these biomass system, these mother trees, and started pruning them. And it reversed the disease but did not cure the plants. So they were able to actually get harvest again, but they weren't entirely cured. Right beside those on the same property, they started planting new systems in the Syntropic method, and those new systems, the baby citrus trees, were not affected at all. So it was a really powerful example of its ability to prevent disease. And also witch broom disease, which affects cacao production, was endemic in the area where Ernest's farm is. And it also actually for a number of years completely stopped production of chocolate in that area. His farm continued to be productive. The disease did show up, he had to manage, but it didn't result in a loss. So, what's interesting is it's not that he had a special remedy or a special plant that he planted to naturally prevent the disease. He was just managing the system. He's just doing what was best to create a thriving system, and then the system blocked the disease. I use an analogy. I use a couple analogies. One is a lot of us know that we have healthy bacteria in our stomach, and if you take too many antibiotics, you can kill it. And and then another disease can come in called C. diff, and you can have like really severe inflammation in your colon. It's kind of the same with farming. And all those soil microorganisms I talk about, they're not just in the soil, they're on the plant itself. They're on the stems, the bark, the leaves. They're like armor. And when the plants are healthy, they don't get sick. And there's actually regenerative farmers now who are suggesting that the disease only happens when there is a missing nutritional need. So it's basically a sign that your plant's not healthy. It's not getting the nutrition, and the disease is coming in to basically take away an ill plant. Most of the time it's because our soil isn't rich enough. We're trying to grow something in soil that's been degraded. So nature's like, hey, this isn't right. This is, we'll remove it, we'll send in a disease, and then we'll let the weeds grow, which are perfectly adapted to the soil the way it is, if that makes any sense. So another analogy we like to use in Haiti, we talk if you're stressed and you're not sleeping well, you're not eating healthy food, and you start getting sick, you know, okay, go ahead, take a cold tablet if you want, but don't tell yourself that you've fixed the problem, right? You're going to get sick again unless you deal with the root cause. So illness is a message. It's not the problem. Here's another image from the Inga Foundation. That's the system in Honduras. I showed you the beans that grew without irrigation. So look at the amount of wood these guys are getting. And the families have this. This is like an added economic value. Some families are making charcoal, or they're using this for cooking in their home. We encourage them to leave a portion to the soil, and it works out pretty well because the most nutritional part of the wood is the smaller branches for the soil. It's called ramial wood. So they can harvest a couple of the bigger pieces, which are better for building and burning, and then give back all the rest to the soil. And one of the reasons wood is really critical is that that's what the soil fungi eats. So the bacteria you need to create, you need the plants and the roots and the cool, wet environment, but for the fungi you also need the wood in addition to all those factors. Okay, back to this image here. I just wanted this as a visual to show that the work is more pleasant too. In Haiti, we have very clay-heavy soil, and there's these 50 and 60-year-old farmers that come out every year and they till with a pick land that looks like that just to grow 1, maybe 2 cycles of crops before the next dry season. They have these huge clumps of earth. They have to break them up. It's back-breaking work, and it's repeated again and again and again, and it's hot, and it's there's no food after that one crop is done. I believe they would be all much happier working in this environment. And if you're growing a diversity of fruit trees, often there's a new crop coming in you can be eating while you're working. If you do a bomber job of planting, you can really just till one time. You can till one time. Even the weeding can be minimal if you're able to bring in enough biomass to mulch. And then as the system develops, you're collecting your mulch right on site. So there's very, very little tilling and weeding after the initial setup. And then most of the work is standing. You're on your feet, you're doing some pruning. It's way more comfortable. I find it enjoyable. It's kind of artistic. You're in there like, pruning trees is like sculpting a little bit. And then you can see the results. It's really pleasant work. And another benefit for those farmers that having to pay more and more for pesticides and herbicides is a reduction in and potentially complete elimination of inputs. Okay, and then the last benefit I'm going to go over is for this middle section here. It's a testimony from Ernst's property and its ability to really restore ecosystem if this is done on a large scale. So Ernst bought, I think it was 600 hectares of land that had been deforested and it had been farmed in various methods until the farmers abandoned it because it wouldn't grow. And this is not an actual picture of his property, but that's the best representation they could find of what it looked like. And he told me in a corner he did have some mature trees, which is one of the reasons he chose that property. So he had a source of seeds. And he took a group of guys in pickup trucks, and the guys did the digging, like holes every 3 meters. He came through and planted the seeds and learned to plant in little consortiums. And he basically reforested not the entire area himself. He got enough of it reforested, and then nature took it the rest of the way. And then this is actual drone footage. This is his home. I don't know if you can see the little white spot there. And the area is now, he did this in 1980 is when he started, or 85, something like that, 45 years ago. Now the area, the soil conditions have totally changed. He's growing cacao in 7-hectare section that he manages intensely. There were multiple, maybe 17 streams that would go dry every dry season. Now they hold water year round. He even forms his own, they have rain clouds which form on this property from the restoration of the ecosystem. So it's really cool to see. And he describes how the soil was like rock hard, compacted, strong winds coming through, dust. I mean, that's what he was dealing with when he began. once the trees got big enough, you could start pruning them. He said everything changed. You could actually see the soil transform. And I just saw one of my friends post a picture of a project in Europe, and I forgot to include that picture. And it's like within just 2 years, they show how the soil goes from clay and blanched looking to dark earthy on the property they're working just from applying these principles. It's actually very quick turnaround. And everybody could see from Ernst's results that he was having, that he was doing a good job. But what's cool is a soil scientist came and did a study there just a year or two ago. Somebody trained by Elaine Ingham. And so it's a new type of soil science. Instead of measuring chemistry, they come in and they measure soil life or biology. And so he did that. He did it on Ernst's farm. He checked a conventional cacao farm, a native forest that was 70 years old, and then some land that was like kind of his original degraded. And what they found, I won't go into like this in real detail, but the more fungal presence over bacteria, the more fertile your soil. And they found that his property was 4 times more fertile than a native forest. So a 40-some-year-old system that he sped up compared to a 70-year-old natural forest, the fertility is 4 times better. So as I was saying in the beginning, it's like taking nature's principles and then speeding it up. They also looked for pathogenic or disease-causing microlife, and they just found none in his property, but they found them almost equally present in all the others. And then another test they did was they stuck a probe in the soil to measure the compaction, and they got all the way down to 40 centimeters. Actually, that was the length of the probe, and they couldn't find substantial compaction. He's building like 2 inches of soil every year. It's just all like humus that he's adding on top. Okay, so those are all the benefits, and then some of the challenges, at least in Haiti, that I encounter is. I should reverse these. It takes a lot of work to plant these systems. You're planting like your annuals if you're used to planting corn and beans. You're also planting perennials or biannuals, plants that you're going to harvest year 2, year 3, all integrated into the same area. You're also planting fruit trees. So it's like you're planting for 60, 70, or 80 years all at one time. So it's really meticulous. There's a certain attention to detail that's needed when you're doing these plantings. And so it's a lot more work than a typical farmer is used to doing. And then the other challenge is that all that's rewarded, but it's delayed. So you really have to, it helps to have a mature system that people can see. And then you need to learn to collect seeds, especially from trees and plants that may not be considered valuable. These are the ones you're going to use to build soil. You need to learn some new skills, and there are multiple levels of skills, but you have lots of time to learn them too. And then to see those ecosystem benefits, it's really got to be on a large scale like Ernest did.